And we're glad.
That's right, Charlie. Ken, David, John, and Renee. Hello to all of y'all. You too, Hazel.
All right, Lori, are we ready to go?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our August 10th, 2020 regular Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting. I'd like to start with some introductions. We have quite a few people on tonight. We have our Planning Director, Jay Camp, Commissioner Dave Bland, Commissioner Jeff Miller, Commissioner Larry Whitley, Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner, our Town Attorney Charlie Buckley, Town Manager Hazen Blodgett, Commissioner John Urban, Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk, Town Clerk Lori Canapino, Commissioner Ken McCool, and we also have some other town staff on. Our Chief of Police Clark Pennington is on, our Public Relations Coordinator Maureen Keith, our Public Works Director CJ O'Neill, and I believe I saw Transportation Engineer Susan Habina Wilderd also is on, and I'm sorry if I missed some others. Our planning board as well, so quite a few folks on this call tonight. I'd like to remind everyone that due to Mecklenburg County's COVID-19 stay-at-home order, this meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners will be conducted remotely using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. Town of Matthews is committed to transparency and to robust public participation during these challenging times. I'll remind everyone that the mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, meaning each member will be polled to individually state their vote for the record. They will also raise their hand to virtually indicate their vote. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, the invocation. If you so desire, please join me in a prayer. Lord, help us keep the elderly, those in poor health, and the otherwise vulnerable safe during this pandemic. Give us the patience to stay in place when we need to, and the willingness to put others first when we should. We pray that you will meet each and every one of us where we are and see us through these turbulent times. We ask that you calm the storm that is brewing around us and heal our land from polarization, racial strife, and sickness. Help each of us to learn to listen, really listen to those with whom we disagree, and to search for areas where we can find solutions to problems with compromise. We ask that you keep those that intercede on our behalf in times of violence and emergencies safe as they conduct their responsibilities. And finally, Lord, we ask that you give the 7 town leaders who sit tonight on this virtual dais the courage and wisdom to make the best decisions for the citizens of Matthews. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
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 Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let me get my flag out. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. We receive an update on COVID-19 from Emergency Operations Center Commander Rob Kinnenberg. Rob, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you earlier.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Today reflects day 153 of our ongoing efforts and EOC activity regarding COVID. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Mecklenburg County had 22,222 total cases and 239 deaths. There's been a lot of talk about the direction of the metrics here in Mecklenburg County and across the state. I think it's important to remember that the data that the reports and the metrics are based on comes from a variety of sources that are not all synchronized. There have been changes in reporting formats on a state and federal level. So trying to normalize the data or respond to a report you see in the newspaper today versus how it was yesterday sometimes can be misleading. So I try to look at a 2-week window in the synopsis that I give council. Total cumulative case count has increased 20% over the last 2 weeks, which is a continued slowing of the rate of increase. The county looks at a 7-day average, and we are at the lowest new case average, 7-day average since early June. So that is indeed a positive. The deaths have increased by 26% over the last 2 weeks, but again, that's a fairly stable climb. We've averaged a little under 3,400 COVID tests daily. There has been a lot of information in the media about a declining number of tests. I think that's most related to the holidays. The reporting is about a week to 2 weeks behind, and people are frankly getting tired of being tested, and many people are being tested multiple times. We've had an 11% decline in the average number of COVID patients hospitalized. And again, we are at the lowest point in terms of numbers of people hospitalized since early July. So that again is positive. Social distancing index has seen an improvement since the governor's mask order went into place on June 29th. But we've seen a gradual decline in the social indexing through the month of July. Just as perspective, we were at a rating of 60 in April, 50 in early May, and now we're at a 30 in the end of July. Currently, 69 town residences are in isolation in 55 different locations. Royal Park and Plantation Estates is on the county's watch list due to outbreaks in those facilities. It's important to know that outbreak is now defined as 2 or more people in the same location. So again, a little misleading nomenclature. The county, the hospitals, the volunteer groups are working on a mass mask distribution plan for the county. We have received 50,000 masks for distribution to town residents, and we'll begin distributing those masks to churches, civic groups, and other groups that would like to help in that effort. The bar dining service was halted by executive order. Several towns have chosen to opt out of that order, including the town of Mint Hill. Emergency service staffing continues to be stable, but highly subject to the effects of only a single exposure, coupled with our seasonal vacations. This week's big questions: what impact will remote learning have on our employees? Matthews is exploring the need for employee child care coverage and exploring learning pods as an option for residents' children in Matthews. Are the recent improvements to the COVID matrix going to continue? That is to be seen. When will bars and gyms be allowed to reopen? And will Matthews revisit the bar dining services question? Hurricane Isaias missed us, but wreaked havoc on the coast. The big issue was, would Mecklenburg County have the capacity to shelter hurricane affected residents? And if so, how? Point of reference, we are further along in the hurricane naming nomenclature than we have ever been before. So it's a very active hurricane season. Believe it or not, we are talking about winter sheltering plans. And with elections around the corner, election-related activities impact by COVID is being monitored, including where people will early vote and how those functions will be staffed. That's all I have for my report. I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Excellent report as usual. Are there any questions for Chief Kinnenberg?
Larry Whitley, I have a question. You know,
Yes, sir.
some months back, I had asked and see if I could get maybe a testing site here at my church for the Crestdale community. Is there any way we can probably still look into that and maybe see if we can pull together something for a testing site for the Crestdale community?
I'll touch base with the health department and see if they have any plans to do that.
All right, I would certainly welcome that if we can put that together.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions for Chief Kinnenberg? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Mr. Manager, are there any items to be added to the agenda tonight? You're on mute, sir. We didn't hear you, Hazel.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, public comment. Lori, would you introduce our two speakers tonight?
Yes, our first public commenter is Rob Hunter. We do have another person signed up, but after Mr. Hunter speaks, I'll need to see if the second speaker is available.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Hunter, please wait until the public comment timer begins, and then you may start speaking.
Rob, you may be on mute. We can't hear you.
My fault. I thought Lori was unmuting me from that side. Thank you. Good evening. It's good to see you. I hope you and all your families are healthy and well. I know it's a hard time. I have to admit, I've not been very connected to much of what the board has been doing, but I guess that's one of the benefits of retirement. But it also comes, not only with a hope, but a belief that when you're speaking about issues and problems publicly, that you're speaking with words that are informed and fact-based. 2 weeks ago tonight, I was sitting at home doing some work, received a call from someone I used to work with who asked, was I watching, had I been watching the council meeting? To which I happily said, no, I wasn't. But then I was told about a statement that Mayor Pro Tem Garner had made about our community being one that is as recently as 10 years ago was one where Blacks knew that Matthews was a place where it was dangerous to drive while Black. This person was confused by it, but also hurt by it, and so was I. I watched the video as soon as it was available, and I have to say that I was offended when I saw the video. And I will tell you that even during the course of the week, I was contacted by several other people who had seen it as well or heard about it and looked it up, and it showed and it indicated to me that it was touching other people. Now, I have to say I wasn't offended by the topic or even by the perceived belief. I have no way of knowing how it feels to be a minority, particularly when police are around, and I absolutely understand. The fears and the perceptions and the beliefs, are based in reality across our country, have been for many, many, many years. But what I do know is the people that I served with, we've had some troubles over the years, but I have served with a bunch of so dedicated and high integrity individuals in the department. And I was hurt and worried for how this was going to affect them when they learned of this. When I know of, I can speak facts and speak numbers all night long, but those don't address perceptions. If you're on the receiving end of it and your perception is you're unsafe, you're unsafe. But I can tell you, the facts from the time that the SBI started accepting or receiving traffic stop data from police departments, we had participated from day one, even before the state mandated it, and it continued to do so. And I know the facts usually were. It was white males between 25 to 40 that generally were the highest demographic. But I'll tell you, here's why my frustration still remains. As I watched the video, I even watched Chief Bennigan's look of surprise when he heard it. There were no questions asked. There were no challenges of her statement. Now, I will say Ms. Garner did reach out to me this past week with a very sincere apology and explanation, and I accept that. And I understand this is a very, very hard topic to speak about. But you know, here's my closing words, I guess I would say to you. You know, obviously words have power, but words of elected officials have a power of certainty. You know, when citizens are hearing your words, they're assuming that those words are based on fact. They're based on information that's come from your professionals, your department heads, and others. But those words have an impact of power. And I will tell you, I'll share with you, I'm so tired of hearing, particularly as we have in this last year, elected officials, particularly in Congress, and our president, who will preface things by saying, someone said, or I heard someone said, or I heard it read somewhere. You know, if an elected official cannot take ownership of their words and their beliefs, then they're harming people by saying them. And I know my time is up, but that is what I wanted to share. That's my challenge to you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Lori, do we have another speaker this evening?
We do. One moment, please. Okay, our next speaker is Frank LaFragola. He is participating via audio only. Jay, could you put up the timer, please? And Mr. LaFragola, when the timer starts, you may begin.
Okay, I'm actually on the phone. I'm not on video, so you'll have to just let me know when the timer starts.
Okay, please start now.
Great. So, hello, Council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Frank LaFragola Jr. I am the managing partner of Jekyll and Hyde Tap House and Grill, right down the street. I wanted to just make a public comment and just talk about some of the events going on in the city of Matthews with at least small business, in particular, the food industry, restaurants. Recently, we had an ordinance passed in regards to bar business due to, I believe, some events that probably took place uptown, which is now affecting Matthews restaurants. That new ordinance is no one's allowed to stand or sit at the bars anymore, not even after 11 o'clock, but just throughout the entire day, 7 days a week. What I wanted to just talk about that was, I feel like the Matthew restaurants were being punished by something that happened uptown. You know, those events, I understand what the mayor of Charlotte was doing as far as why she wanted the social distancing and why she felt that she put these rules into place. But I do feel Matthews is not the place to have that type of ordinance. And my reasoning is that a majority of our customers that we see in town, as well as I could speak on Jekyll and Hyde, are between the ages of 35, 45. We're not a rowdy bar. We're a cocktail bar. Lots of families come into the restaurant. Couples that come in the evening. We have a lot of date night people that come in. It is affecting our business. You know, with COVID in place right now, we do have to abide by social distancing. And of course, with the 50% capacity, if anyone's aware, restaurants do not operate at a high profit margin. It's usually between 5 and 10%. Losing 50% of your business is rough. We're at Tap House. Losing your entire bar after you've already lost 50% is extremely rough. Yeah, some of the businesses were struggling in town. We're all having a rough time, but taking away a bar business to something that I believe we're being punished for from the uptown area is something I don't think we should be a part of, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm hoping that we could have a rollback just as Mint Hill did, where they took that ordinance and they removed it, where people now are allowed to sit at the bar and to dine in again. I'm hoping that we're able to do that. Again, you know, small businesses, we are having a rough time. Anything that could help us out in the community is greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I want to comment to both speakers, if I could briefly, for Rob Hunter. I want to say that we will be having further dialogue on this issue, and it is a very difficult thing to discuss and talk about. And you know, there'll be a time that we will discuss that further. I appreciate your comments. And to Mr. LaFragola, I want to let you know that Jekyll and Hyde's is one of my favorite restaurants in town. I've eaten there many, many times. And I spoke with our town manager tonight, and I think you have some very valid comments. And I intend to bring this up during my mayor's report at the end of this meeting to see if we maybe can address the issue in some way similar to Mint Hill, but I want to discuss it with the entire board. So we will be looking at that. For right now, we're going to move on to agenda item number 7. We want to recess the regular meeting for public hearings on an application to amend the Unified Development Ordinance and land use map of the town of Matthews. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCool. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Bland, and I vote affirmative as well. So we are now recessed from our regular meeting. Jay, can you introduce the planning board, please?
Happy to, Mr. Mayor. I was looking through our attendee list. I believe everyone is in attendance. We have our chair, Mike Foster, members Jonathan Clayton, Tom Dorsey, Jim Johnson, Carrie Lamson, Matt Main, and Jana Reeve.
Okay, thank you. Our first item, and we literally tonight almost have the town board in a cast of thousands. There's a lot of people in this meeting. But welcome to the planning board. Our first item, 7A, zoning application 2020-713 Home Depot to change the conditions in that certain B1 SCD shopping center district, commonly known as the Home Depot, and located at 1827 Matthews Township Parkway and further designated as tax parcel 193-23133. This has been continued from 7/13/2020. Mr. Hallman.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is application 2020-713. Home Depot is requesting site changes to allow for outdoor equipment storage, as well as trailers for use of sale for pine straw. And then they're requesting changes to the scope and time frame that they're allowed to use the outdoor garden corral. Next slide. This is in the Matthews Festival parking lot or shopping center. Most of the changes affecting are in the parking lot directly in front of Home Depot. Next slide. So when this property was originally zoned to the shopping center district, it was allowed to use a garden corral. It was limited to 120 days from mid-March through mid-July. Outdoor equipment sales and the use of tractor trailers for sales were not allowed at that time. Home Depot did come before the board in December 2019 to request these changes. The board at that time denied them. In March of 2020, the board did grant a waiver for the 1-year resubmittal waiting period. Next slide. For the current site conditions, Home Depot has removed all of the outdoor equipment storage in front of the building. In the parking lot area, they have begun replacing trees in the planting islands, and then along the old movie theater, they have replaced the trees as well. Next slide. Okay, so this is an overview of the proposed site plan. The outdoor garden sales are limited to the northern side of the building, and then the equipment rentals will be on the south side of the building, over near the Stein Mart. Next slide. Now we do have some zoomed in images of the site plan. So on the right side, you'll see, or excuse me, on the left side, you'll see the year-round equipment and trailer storage. So the equipment storage will be located directly in front of the building, as well as beside the building near the rear. That's indicated with the orange markings. In front of the building for the equipment sales, Home Depot is also proposing to use movable planters. An example of that is located at the bottom. And then in the green shaded area, Home Depot is also proposing to install new planting islands. And then they're a bit faint, but there are some red markings in the parking lot. In order to meet the minimum parking requirements of the UDO, Home Depot is installing 25 compact parking spaces. On the right side of the screen, this does show the outdoor garden sales. The red hash marked area is the current garden corral. Home Depot is requesting that the condition that it only be allowed from mid-March through mid-July be removed. North of that, or excuse me, above that, in the green shaded area would be the location of the tractor trailers. There are two, and then to the right of that, there's a slight gray area. They will be extending the curb, or they'll be extending the curb and guardrail right there by about 8 feet. Next slide. And then at the request of Public Works, Home Depot will also be reconfiguring one of the internal intersections. So
I'll turn over control for you, Darren. I'll let you
okay,
point it
thank
out.
you.
All right, you should be good to go.
All right. So this is a little intersection directly behind Metro Diner. What Home Depot and Public Works have determined to do is they'll be closing this driveway and then extending this drive aisle so that it forms a T-junction with this drive aisle. And what that'll help do is that'll alleviate one point of conflict. And so it'll just be a bit more of a seamless intersection. All right. Okay. And then since they last came before the board back in December, one second. Home Depot has, or there have been 3 changes of the conditions. The first being Home Depot is now proposing that they use those movable planters around the outdoor equipment storage. And then they've also moved the pine trailers to the side of the building. And then in addition to that, staff is also requesting that we add some type of note to allow driveway access along the rear or somewhere along the rear of the building. There is a future proposed road by NCDOT. Go to the next slide. This is consistent with the land use plan. And then this is Independence. No, that's fine. We can go to the next one. This is the proposed roadway by NCDOT. For those of you not familiar, these are 3 different, or they're 3 distinct lanes. So there is an upper section, a lower section, and then a hybrid route between the 2. And so staff isn't necessarily proposing anything immediate, but we would like to see, we would like to have something that would at least allow some future driveway to perhaps be put in. Next slide. And then there was no comment from the community meeting. And I would also like to note, so for the garden corral, there is a limitation of 120 days currently from the previous rezoning. For the outdoor pine straw trailers, those will be restricted to 120 days. The staff is requesting a note there for clarity. And that is not from the conditional zoning. That is a requirement for our outdoor sales in the UDO. That concludes the staff report. Are there any questions for me? And also I'd like to note that the applicant has prepared a presentation.
Are there any questions for Darren? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. Darren or anyone that cares to answer this. Yeah, there might be pine needles in March, April, etc. It might be bark at other times of the year, but then there's Christmas trees or Festivus bushes or whatever you want to call them. How does that, I mean, can't that be allowed? What is the purpose of the 120 days if they're expanding the footprint of the asphalt to allow for trailers? And I think I saw a sketch of a canopy between the trailers and the main building. Isn't that allowable, or shouldn't that be considered?
So for the pine straw trailers, that's a requirement in our UDO. It's in our prescribed conditions for the outdoor sales, and that is limited to the tractor trailers with no cab, temporary greenhouses, and tent sales. And so that's a limitation in the 120 days. We have had some discussion with Home Depot, and I believe they'll be proposing a text amendment in the future to remove that 120-day requirement.
Okay, I thought that might have been included here, but I wasn't sure. I just think flexibility is good if they're going to expand the parking lot and put some tractor trailers out there with storage and an awning or a hood over the top. But whatever. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Darren before we move on? Commissioner McCool.
Just to piggyback off of what Jeff said, would this 120 days not allow them to put up a tent to sell their Christmas trees? Because I think I can remember in years past they put up a tent to sell Christmas trees. So does this prevent them from doing that now, or am I mistaken?
No. So the 120-day limitation, it's temporary in nature. So let's say if this passes tonight and they put the tractor trailers out today, 120 days from the date that this passes, the tractor trailers would need to be removed. And then the same would apply for the tent sales. It could only make 120 calories.
Okay,
right?
that makes sense. Thank you.
So to be clear, Darren, that would forbid selling of Christmas trees from tents? From a tent as they have in the past?
Right. They could still have the tent. It would just be, they would need to limit the 120 days of the tractor trailer sales, I believe.
Yeah, I thought that it applied to the garden corral as well, but it doesn't.
Right. So there is a condition from the original rezoning for the garden corral. And in that case, the zoning district is the conditional plans and notes are limiting it. And then I believe the applicant is not requesting that 120 days be removed at this time for the garden corral. At least that's what the last time I spoke with the attorney was. However, if council wanted to, it could, or it does have the option of removing that requirement itself.
Well, speaking for myself, I certainly didn't mind having a tent there at Christmas time with Christmas trees in it. Are there any questions for Darren from the planning board?
Let's clarify a little bit that comment that we could remove that from the UDO tonight. That's not a part of, that wasn't advertised. That's not a condition. That's a text, and require a text amendment and a brand new application. I believe that's correct.
Yes, that's correct. It will be a new application.
So they cannot tonight deal with the 120-day removal. That would require a text amendment.
Correct, for the tractor trailers. However, for the garden corral, there's a stipulation from the original rezoning that the garden corral is limited to 120 days. That could be changed tonight.
That part, yeah.
Or not tonight, but at the decision date.
Okay, are there any questions for Darren from the planning board? And I can only see a few of you, so just chime in if you have a question. Mr. Foster.
Hopefully this to clarify, the 120 days we've been talking about currently, my understanding is it's a distinct period of time just to handle the spring sales. Is Home Depot asking to have that 120 days left in place, however, to be used at their discretion?
That's correct. So The garden corral would be limited to 120 days under the current proposal. However, it would not, or they would be free to use it as they saw fit, not just between mid-March and mid-July.
So that would allow them to use the Christmas tree tent during the end of the year, but that would be part of that 120 days. So they'd have to take that in consideration.
Yes.
The 120 days doesn't have to be concurrent.
No, it's 120 calendar days, so they can spread that throughout the year.
Other questions from the planning board? Okay, Darren or Jay, does the applicant, would they like to make a presentation?
Yes, I'll pull that up now.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and Planning Board members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. My name is Laura Good, and my colleague Christian Torgrensen and I are with Parker Poe. Our business address is 301 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, and we are here on behalf of Home Depot, the applicant, to discuss the requested changes to the zoning conditions and site plan for the Home Depot located at 1837 Matthews Township Parkway, and how these requested changes will be consistent with the town's land use plan and will benefit the residents of Matthews. Also here with me this evening on the phone is Jordan Corbett. He's a professional engineer with Kemley Horn who helped with the site plan changes and can answer any specific questions about the site plan. Also here tonight, I have several members of the team from Home Depot. Again, here just to show that they are here and involved in the process, and in case there are any specific questions you may have that I'm not able to handle. I have Ivelisse Guadalupe. She is a legal specialist for Home Depot, as well as Fernando Santiago. He is the actual store manager at this location. Also on the line is Frederick Simpson and Mikhail Damberville, and they are with the rental department for Home Depot. If we could go to the next slide. So as Darren gave a great presentation and really did a great job of doing an overview of our application, this is just a slide to show you the location of the store that I know you are all familiar with. And I will just go right into the specific requests that we've asked for. If you could go to the next slide. So this shows the proposed site plan and highlights in the areas circled in yellow the changes that we are asking for. I wanted to kind of hit on some of the questions that have been asked from multiple members about the outdoor storage and the 120-day time frame. So when we filed this application originally last year, we did ask for the 120-day limit to be removed for the seasonal storage. However, it is our understanding that as the code is currently written today, it is a 120-day limit on seasonal outdoor storage when you have it under a tent, which would be like, you know, the mulch and things of that nature in front of the store, as well as a 120-day limit for the sale of pine straw from the tractor trailers. So we would certainly be open to, as part of the text amendment that Darren mentioned, we are planning to file that after this application is heard by the board. We would certainly be open to, in addition to removing the 120-day time frame for the sale of pine straw from the trailers, we would be open to, you know, expanding that as needed to allow for the sale of Christmas trees or any other flexibility that the town would like to have in that text amendment for the seasonal outdoor sales as well. And I'll just go through and highlight these in turn. If we could go to the next slide. All right, so we've already talked a little bit about the 120-day seasonal outdoor storage in front of the outdoor store or the outdoor center. Again, the reason we are just requesting flexibility in the time frame is because of the way that the UDO is written right now. So right now, as written, we would request that this be changed to allow for flexibility in when that time frame starts. Right now, we are only allowed to have that outdoor storage from mid-March to mid-July. And so we are just requesting some flexibility based on seasonal fluctuations. But again, we could incorporate that into a text change to remove that 120-day limit if that's something that the board and the town would be supportive of. Next slide, please. The next screenshot shows the location that we are proposing for the outdoor storage of the pine straw and hay trailers. I did want to clarify that the area that's shown as the storage canopy to the left, that is not part of this site plan change. That is already existing there. So that structure is already existing there. And that's actually where we have the pine straw and hay trailers right now. But we are asking that they be allowed to be outside so that we can use that storage canopy for other merchandise that's requested at the store by our customers. And again, we would be seeking a text amendment after filing this application, or after this application is finished, to allow for greater than 120 days for the outdoor sale of the pine straw and hay, as this is a very highly demanded merchandise from our customers year round and not just in a 120-day period. If you could go to the next slide. The next slide talks to the outdoor storage of rental equipment. And so this is the first location we've requested outdoor storage of this equipment, which is right in front of the tool center. So it's super convenient for our customers. 5 spaces for trailers. These are the type of trailers that you would hitch to your pickup truck for hauling pine straw, things of that nature, as well as 15 spaces for other large format equipment, such as tillers or aerators or things of that nature. And one of the main changes we made to our application this time, we listened to the feedback from the board last time. We have added, as a condition to the site plan, some mobile planters to be placed around those parking spaces to partially screen those that heavy equipment and break up the kind of sea of asphalt look in this existing parking lot. Shown here is an example of what the planters could look like. We haven't sourced those yet, but it's just an example showing that there will be wheels on the bottom, so they're movable as we go and get the rental equipment in and out of the parking spaces. Next slide, please. The second location for the outdoor storage of rental equipment would be at the left rear corner of the store, in between the Steinmart and the Home Depot store. This would be, again, super convenient for the customers as they come out of the tool rental center. And it will also be out of view from the large majority of customers, as this is in an alleyway that's not a storefront and just in front of the rear loading alley. Next slide, please. The other site plan changes that Darren already went over is that we are going to add 4 additional landscape islands to the parking lot. Again, listening to that feedback from the board to improve the aesthetics and reduce that sea of asphalt look in this existing parking center. Additionally, we are restriping several parking spaces that will allow us to pull that parking island up off of the property line there at the Big Lots and Metro Diner, and hopefully increase the traffic flow coming off of Matthews Township Parkway, not only for our customers, but for all of the customers to the Matthews Festival Shopping Center. In addition, we have started replacing those dead trees that were brought to our attention on our property line near the old movie theater. And finally, this slide just goes to how these changes will be consistent with the land use plan and benefit the community of Matthews, specifically supporting policy statement number 6 to establish Matthews as a distinct, attractive, and high quality community. We will be improving the development to be more convenient and attractive to the Matthews residents, and to also retain and enhance the store's economic value to the town. Specifically, the land use plan speaks to how these large retailers, including Home Depot, are large contributors to the tax base. Last year, this store generated $2.4 million in tax revenue. And to date for 2020, we are on track for $1.5 million in tax revenue. Additionally, the land use plan speaks to how Home Depot is one of the largest employers in the town of Matthews. We do have 181 associates here. So all of these changes that will help us better serve our customers, will improve our economic viability here, and will keep the tax dollars here and help us support the employees. We're, doing very strong in this COVID environment, and we're very thankful for that. And this allows us to also continue to be a strong employer in the community. Importantly, in terms of the rental equipment, the closest store that has this type of heavy rental equipment available is in Fort Mill. So Matthews residents are having to go across state lines and rent that equipment. So that tax revenue is going into a different economy, and it's just not convenient for the town of Matthews residents. So we hope that all of these changes will really bring everything in line with the town of Matthews requirements in its ordinance, but also help us to continue to be a strong contributor to the town of Matthews. I did want to briefly touch on the first condition that was put before you in your staff report. This was the condition related to the pedestrian connection for a potential extension of the Independence Point Parkway extension. I just wanted to make it clear that this was not a condition that was put forth by the applicant as part of its rezoning application. This was a condition that was brought to our attention by town planning last week. So we're not in a position right now to agree to that condition. We're happy to work with NCDOT and the town in the future, but it seems to be a bit of a separate issue from our changing conditions application. So we would request that this not be a condition on our application. However, if this is something that's super important to the town and to this board, we're willing to continue discussions about how we could word that that condition and continue working through that as this application progresses. I do not have anything else, but I'm here to answer any questions, as well as the representatives from Kimley Horn and Home Depot at your pleasure. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Laura, regarding the connectivity to Independence Point Parkway, I'm not sure who might have raised the pedestrian, but I would think NCDOT has to build the connector road before they widen Independence Boulevard. And almost by default, would they not be responsible for an adjacent sidewalk, and that wouldn't be coming into play? Jay, do you have any knowledge on that?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to 2019. So we had some discussion with Home Depot about a potential driveway connection to that future Independence Point Parkway as a means to facilitate better traffic flow. And
Sure.
that's been identified. We've talked about that at length. Now, there's a significant grade change at the back of this. And until we know more about the final alignment of Independence Point, we don't yet know if it's even feasible to make a driveway connection. There's been some discussion that it would be near the Harris Teeter Pharmacy. But our perspective here is that it would be nice to have at least a reference on the conditional plan of, maybe that the applicant or property owners would work with the town and NCDOT if the driveway was proposed in this area to make that a possibility.
But you're saying that NCDOT, if they're going to build a driveway or a bridge similar to, let's say, Sycamore Commons, going to Bed Bath and Beyond or something like that, that they wouldn't include a sidewalk? That's contrary to, the complete streets.
Yes, there should be sidewalk on both sides of that future road.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make a quick comment too.
Sure.
So the interesting thing about this shopping center, it's owned by several national REITs, and it's very hard to maneuver around as it is now. And NCDOT, when they finished all these road improvements, can really create a very difficult shopping center to access. And in our preliminary discussions with all the different owners, there's nobody really wants to take the lead because there's, I think, 4 or 5 different owners, and it's kind of like, it almost feels like every person for themselves. And what we're worried about long-term is not having a great, viable shopping center. And you know, Home Depot looks out for their interests, Harris Teeter looks out for theirs, Steinmart works out, concerned about theirs. Big Lots is owned by another company. So this probably is going to be one of the best driveway locations as we see it going forward. And I think Jay's right. We're just looking for some kind of acknowledgement that Home Depot in this case will help everybody else, including themselves, long term.
Do you care to comment on that, Ms. Good?
Sure. So it's definitely not, it's our intent to definitely work with the town and NCDOT to make sure that there is an appropriate driveway access in the future. But again, without that being planned out and without knowing the specifics of it and that being a completely separate project, it would just be our preference that that not be a condition to this zoning approval. However, again, we are open to continuing to discuss this with town staff in terms of rewriting of language. It's just something that we were not aware of as being a condition until last week. So we haven't had a chance to digest that, but we're happy to continue to speak with staff about it as this case progresses.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Good from the board? Commissioner Urban?
Yeah, first of all, I do want to thank Laura and her presentation and Home Depot. I've been out there. They've cleaned up the lot. They've been planting the trees. They moved the trailers. At this point in time, they're making a good faith effort, unlike 18 months ago or 2 years ago. But I think that's a positive step. I will go on record as supporting Jay Camp and staff on a reference to a future connection. I think that's important. And even if it's a boundary or a description, something's there, because out of sight, out of mind, if we drop that conversation tonight, it'll probably never come back again. So I think we need to keep it on the table. I think the connector road behind Home Depot opens up a lot of potentials for them as well, for marketing purposes and visual. Now, my specific comments, I think there's a lot of improvement here. My specific comments are, I'd like to see an image of what these trailers are for the 5 spaces. Because if they're sitting in a parking space, this trailer obviously isn't very large, but I'd like to sort of see what indeed that is. And if at all possible, I'd like to also see what the image of this large format equipment is as well. You've reduced the amount of area probably by 60, 70%, which is good. But I'd like to get a sort of my handle on what do these trailers look like? Are they box trailers? Are they flatbed trailers with tilt gates? Stuff like that, just for peace of mind. And then we talk about the example of mobile planter boxes, and they could go a long ways in buffering visually this equipment, but I'd like to maybe have some negotiation as to how many planter boxes and where they might be located, because you show me a picture of one and we may end up with one if we don't have it clearly delineated on the plans. So those are my only comments at this time. Other than that, I do appreciate everything you've done so far. Having driven it just in the last few days, your eye doesn't turn to that equipment and that whole area there, and it looks more cohesive with the rest of the center. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban, and we will be happy. I can get you and the rest of the board members some images of the trailer specifically and and examples of the types of equipment that would be in those parking spaces, and happy to continue discussing any suggestions you have for the planters.
I might just offer a comment. I agree with Commissioner Urban that I know it's maybe a little premature since the NCDOT designs aren't complete, but at least a reference to a connection there would be very, would serve Home Depot well to work towards that, much easier to access. Are there any other questions from the board? Commissioner Bland?
Yeah, I mean, this may not be, I was just like the road coming in the back, the Matthews Parkway that's kind of behind there that the DOT is talking about building. The space between home base that's in there, if they're going to be putting storage in that space, is that going to affect the ability for like fire trucks or emergency vehicles, or that seems to be a pretty narrow space. Is that, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I need to go over there and take a closer look at it, but I was thinking that if that's going to be major artery getting into the shopping center, is this just a temporary thing, or is this something a permanent? Or is when they put the new road in, are they going to come back and revisit this? Because it seems to me that that could be a problem. Maybe I'm wrong. Hello.
Hi, I'm happy to speak. I just saw that Jay was opening his screen, so I was going to let planning speak first if they'd like to, but I would like to respond as well on behalf of the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just bringing this up for reference, Commissioner Bland. So you could to point to the area between Steinmart and Home Depot. So your concern is the width of that drive aisle. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just concerned that, like I drive by there in the front of it all the time. It's not that big of a space in the front. It looks like it's wider towards the back, but where they're going to have the storage, which maybe answers my question. But I just didn't want to make a situation where it's going to be difficult for, say, fire trucks or emergency vehicles to get in and out of there, depending on how well they set the stuff up back there as far as storage. Am I missing something? I mean, does that look like that's more than sufficient space?
So I can also say, Jay, if there's a way for you to show the site plan, we can also show it in perspective to what's already there. It won't be any wider. It will not extend any further beyond the building than what's already there on the side of the building. If you see that orange rectangle that's highlighted at the rear of the building, so it will not protrude any further from the sides, either to the side or to the back of the building than, the existing outdoor storage there. It will be well within, in front of the back loading alley. It will not protrude outside of that area. And also the staff report does mention that the fire marshal did not have any concerns, again, because we're not protruding any further into either of those drive aisles than what is already there.
It's not from the drawings. It wasn't that clear to me, but I appreciate that. That's what I was concerned about. But is that not going to affect the, I guess, if that becomes a major entranceway into the shopping center, when they build that road back there, is that not going to have to change at that point in time?
So Commissioner Bland, it really is, what you're asking is a very valid question. I think from a staff perspective, we're trying to chip away at this one thing at a time, because if we ended up making the main entrance over there by what's typically the mattress place, I don't even know if it's open right now, there's hardly any stacking there. And then you're going behind, like the Dairy Queen and the Big Lots. So it's like all our options are very limited for flow. And I think you were raising, this is not a complete solution, but in my mind, at least, it's let's get it on the table. And then, maybe 5, DOT's got money problems. We all know that. When is this really going to have something to be addressed? It may be, 8 or 10 years from now, and maybe there's a whole different configuration. Maybe Home Depot's facing their building a different way. So I don't think we got a complete solution for the driveway at this point, but we want to at least get it on the table. So, smarter heads can figure it out 7 years from now.
But by making this change, we're not boxing ourselves in any way, or are we?
We are not.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioners for Ms. Good? How about the planning board? I can only see a few of you. Okay, Mr. Foster, go ahead. You're on mute.
Mike, you're muted.
You're on mute, sir.
I was trying to click it and I missed. Jay, can you put the overview of the parking lot back up for just a second? Okay, if you can move it over toward the right where we can, yeah, there we go. Question for Laura. It looks like several of the spots that you're going to restripe are compact cars so you can regain what you're losing on the number of parking spaces. It looks like that's in an area that's going to be unusable for 120 days a year. So we're really not picking up the additional spaces for the full year, only for part of the year?
So I think that's two different locations that we're talking about, if I'm understanding your question correctly. So the restriping of the spaces to pull up the parking island is over to the south side of the property, which is to the left side of the screen. The outdoor seasonal storage, those spaces are up to the north side of the property, right in front of the garden center where he's circling right now. So they're on two opposite sides of the parking lot. So the spaces that are being restriped are not to be used for any type of storage.
Okay, I was mistaken, and I appreciate that clarification, because there was a lot of red over there on the right side too, and I was making the erroneous assumption, I guess, that that was being restriped also.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the planning board? Hearing none, we appreciate the presentation. Lori, have we had any public hearing comments been received on this?
No, sir, we have no comments.
Okay, the public will have 24 hours to submit comments by email to matthews@matthewsnc.gov or by phone at 704-708-1222. So I'll repeat those: matthews@matthewsnc.gov or by phone 704-708-1222. This will next go to the planning board and come back to us for final disposition on September 14th. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. We appreciate everything Home Depot does for our community. Been a good corporate partner for us here in Matthews. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and members of the board and members of the commission.
All right. I will entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who seconded it? I'm sorry.
Me.
Second by Commissioner Urban. You and Commissioner Miller are starting to sound alike. That's kind of scary.
Oh my God.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
And Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote affirmative as well. We now stand in our regular meeting once again. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, planning and development business. Let's receive a report now from Planning Board Chair Mike Foster. Mike, once again.
I remembered that time. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and Planning Board members. I have the report for the Planning Board meeting of July 28, 2020. Tonight, we have 3 applications for Town Board action. Application number 1 is rezoning application 2020-711 Christ Life Church. BH, Business Highway Conditional Change of Conditions. Planning Board members voted unanimously to recommend approval for the request to add banquet facility to the list of allowed uses. Members were also updated on the applicant's agreement to delete the use of funeral homes and brew pubs from the table of permitted uses. The request was found to be consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan, as it allows a retail use to the existing building, and allowable uses have been removed that would not be compatible with neighboring properties. The rezoning was found to be reasonable because it allowed for the building to house a banquet facility for meetings and other events in close proximity to local businesses that would otherwise have to look outside of the town of Matthews for such facilities. Rezoning application number 2 is application 2020-712 Morris Family Investments on North Fremont Street from office to residential varied style. Planning Board reviewed the application for rezoning and were updated on the concerns of stormwater management that included an enhanced level spreader for the fronts of the properties, placement of curb and gutter, and plans to regrade portions of North Fremont Street. Planning Board members voted unanimously to recommend approval contingent on additional efforts resolving parking concerns and water runoff. The request was found to be consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan, which encourages residential close to the downtown urban core. The request was found to be reasonable because it allowed for residential use of the property, which is adjacent to other single-family residential rather than office use for which it is currently zoned. Application number 3, application 2020-714, Elizabeth Lane Elementary, change of conditions, residential institutional district. Members were updated on safety and repair measures at Elizabeth Lane Elementary from members of CMS, and we unanimously voted to recommend approval. The request was found to be consistent with a Matthews land use plan, as it would allow Matthews residents or students to continue attending Elizabeth Lane Elementary School. The request was found to be reasonable because it allowed for the continued usage of additional mobile classrooms at Elizabeth Lane Elementary and helps ensure that Matthews students can attend a local school while CMS determines the best permanent solution for use of those mobile home units. Are there any questions from the board?
Okay, seeing none, we'll go right into our planning and development business with item number 1. Zoning application 2020-711, Christ Life Church to change the conditions in that certain VHCD district located at 1641 Matthews Township Parkway, and being the Christ Life Church property and further designated as tax parcels 193-292-23 and 23E, to allow ballrooms, banquets, or meeting and catering halls as permitted use. Mr. Hallman.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, this is Rob Will. I'll be handling this one.
All right, Rob.
All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, planning board members. This is a request to add a catering business to the allowable table of permitted uses under the conditional zoning at 1641 Matthews Township Parkway. There have been no site plan changes since the public hearing. And as the planning board chair mentioned, on July 28th, the planning board unanimously recommended approval of a change in condition request. The applicant has also agreed to delete the uses funeral homes and brew pubs from the BH use table as the staff recommends approval of this request to add catering business to the amended table of permitted uses.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners for Rob? Okay.
I have a question, Mayor.
Sure. Mr. Miller, go ahead, sir.
It just dawned on me. I support the petition and the petitioner. However, my question comes up. I believe we're dealing with two different LLCs. We have a church and we have a catering company. If they are not one and the same, then the catering company would pay taxes. Is that accurate?
Can I jump in here and say that's correct? Even if it was the church doing the catering, anything that's not connected to a religious activity would be taxable.
What about sports?
Well,
bless your heart.
That doesn't change the land use. No, that's a part of it. But the catering business is a commercial in establishment. That would be taxable.
All right, thank you. That was my only concern. I support the petition. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Will? Would anybody like to make a motion? Jeff.
Oh, I'm not prepared.
You want me to do it, Jeff, since I sound like you?
Yeah, you guys sound alike, so either one.
Okay, I'd go ahead and make a motion that we approve the rezoning request 2020-711 Christ Life Church to add catering business to the table of permitted uses as mostly recently amended. And the amendment is recommended for approval and has been found to be consistent, whereas with Matthews land use plan and allows a retail use to the existing building, allowable uses have been removed that would not be compatible with neighboring properties. And it is reasonable, I got two up here, reasonable, the rezoning is reasonable because it allows for the building to house a banquet facility for meetings and other events in close proximity to local businesses that would otherwise have to look outside of Matthews for such facilities.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Miller. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley, Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's go on to the next item. Zoning application 2020-712, Morris Family Investments LLC to change the zoning from office to RVS on that certain property located on North Fremont Street, across the street from 313 and 317 North Fremont Street, and being designated as tax parcel 193-27121. Mr. Will, are you going to handle this one as well?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you. Thank you once again. This is a rezoning request to rezone from office to RVS, residential varied styles. We have had a request from the applicant for a 1-month deferral to further address stormwater drainage and parking issues that were raised at the public hearing and also at the planning board meeting. And staff supports deferral of 1 month to the September 14th regular meeting to give time to address these concerns that both were raised by staff and the public and at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of our board members for Will? No questions at this time. Rob, do you know if there's been any discussion about possibly lowering the height of some of the homes to more
We have not had those discussions. I am not sure, but I know that was a concern that was raised during the public hearing.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, or motions?
I'll make a motion that we defer the final zoning action for 1 month to the September 14th regular meeting to give the applicant time to address concerns raised by staff at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Urban. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley, Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. This zoning request will be deferred until our September 14th meeting. Thank you. Move on to next item, zoning application 2020-714, Elizabeth Lane Elementary. To change the conditions to that RICD district on that certain property commonly known as Elizabeth Lane Elementary School to extend the sunset provision from August 1st, 2020 to August 1st, 2022 for 9 mobile units to remain on the campus. Mr. Coleman, are you taking this?
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to address one point of confusion from the public hearing in regards to the nine mobile unit structures. So those are 8 classrooms that will be affected, and then 1 mobile restroom unit. Should the boundary extension expire, those will need to be removed.
Okay.
Then planning board did, as mentioned, planning board did recommend unanimous approval, and staff recommends approval as well.
Okay, are there any questions for Darren? I'd like to just say that this sunset's been a long time coming. Maybe we'll see the actual sunset in 2022. Do we have any motions?
I have a question, Mayor.
Sure, I'm sorry, Commissioner Miller.
For clarification, it reads there are currently 9 mobile unit structures, which include 8 mobiles and 1 restroom. And it requests that the 9 trailers remain. Yet there are 17 temporary classrooms that started in 1995, 25 years ago. So once again, we question the term temporary and just to be clear to everybody on this call, there are 17 mobile units out there, not 9. 9 is what they expanded outside the envelope years ago.
Right, that's correct. This was the expansion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Or motions?
I'll make a motion
Pro Tem Garner, go ahead, please.
to change the conditions to the existing RICD district on that certain property known as Elizabeth Lane Elementary School, to extend the sunset provision from August 1st, 2020 to August 1st, 2022 for 9 mobile units to remain on the campus.
Second.
We'll need to do
Gotta do reasonable and unreasonable. Jay will give it to you.
The proposed zoning change allows Matthews students to continue attending Elizabeth Lane Elementary School and is reasonable because it allows for the continued usage of additional mobile classrooms at Elizabeth Lane Elementary and helps to ensure that Matthews students attend a local school while CMS determines a best permanent solution for the use of the mobile units.
May I jump in again, Mr. Mayor? The fact that students can come to, Matthew students can come is not a consistency statement. That would go to reasonableness. It needs to be consistent with the land use plan, but the fact that students can go from Matthews can continue to go would go to reasonableness, not consistency. I noticed that when the report was given by the planning board. All you have to do is just say that it's consistent with the land use plan in Matthews, and that's all. You need to change that motion to that.
Okay.
Just repeat the consistency statement. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, that'd be good.
Well, I think he was saying the consistency statement on the statement of consistency is not the correct.
Right. You can change that to saying that it
is consistent with the Matthews land use plan. The use doesn't change.
The requested zoning action, as most currently amended, I motion to approve because it is consistent with the Matthews land use plan and is reasonable because it allows for the continued usage of additional mobile classrooms at Elizabeth Lane Elementary and helps to ensure that Matthews students attend a local school while CMS determines a best permanent solution for the use of the mobile units.
Excellent.
Thank you. That was a tough one to get through. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Garner, a second by Commissioner McCool. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Whitley. I think you're on mute, Larry.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Virtual, yes.
I say yes as well. It's easy for me to talk about people not muting because I never mute my microphone. I think I would be muted half the time if I didn't have to do that, but thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 4, discuss a requirement for zoning community meetings to be recorded. Mr. Camp, this is for discussion purposes only.
Yeah, I've got my own agenda item now. I'm used to just pointing at stuff on the screen. But we are discussing, and this is just for discussion purposes only this evening. There's no action that needs to be taken. But what we want to talk about is potential changes to our community meeting process. You know, as you see here in the memo, this is no longer, will soon be no longer a requirement in state statute when the new Chapter 160D goes into effect. However, Matthew does continue to require community meetings. They are very valuable. They allow the community, I guess, an early heads up as to what's planned in their general vicinity prior to the public hearing and give the neighbors and property owners valuable face time with a developer or property owner seeking to make a change. we currently send notice to a 200-foot buffer. That was changed about a decade or so ago. It used to only be a 100-foot buffer, so we bumped that to 200 feet about a decade or so ago. As you see here, there's a list of information that is to be provided to our department 10 days prior to the hearing. We've been made aware of concerns somewhat recently, but perhaps over the last year or so, that maybe the contents of the meetings are not being accurately represented in the notes that are provided to us. And as it currently stands, we really don't have standards for the notes. It's up to the applicant to take notes as they see fit to describe how that meeting transpired. So the biggest change here would be the potential to record the meetings. It is something that's been suggested, and staff does recommend that we at least give this a shot. Perhaps it's a trial basis for the next year to see how it goes, more so from a logistical perspective. And I'll certainly ask our town clerk, Lori Canapino, to weigh in if she needs to, but there certainly, we put a lot of effort into having quality recordings and well, typically we have a council chamber that has all the information, but of course it's all Zoom now. But if you've got fairly large meetings that are, again, in person in the future, you could have issues with acoustics if you've got a large number of attendees in the meeting, so you may not always hear everything that is said during the meeting. But again, it would still offer more than what we have today, which are just the written minutes. We could also implement into our instructions for community meetings minute taking standards to ensure that the minutes are as accurate as possible. And finally, one thing that I've looked at a few other communities, we might want to consider extending the buffer. I guess we'll go up 100 feet at a time every so often, but I think that casting a wider net alerts folks of what's going on in their general vicinity, and 300 feet is really not that much. A development could have a significant impact on where you live, whether it's 200 feet or 300 feet away from your house or where you live. So Charlie, I skipped over one of the bullet points here. I'm assuming that these recordings, and we haven't determined how they would be provided. Would it be, today it could just be recording a Zoom meeting onto the cloud like we're doing right now. Is that something that we would maintain in perpetuity, or is it something that we could, delete and disregard once it's been used and the zoning case ceases? I think that's a question that staff had.
I think it's a public record and would be subject to the public records law in terms of how long you have to keep it. Not just because it's a part of the zoning application that you can destroy it after that. You would have to maintain it as a public record for the length of time that this type of record would be required to be maintained.
So we typically have paper records, right? So this would be a digital record that we would need to ensure. It would become the responsibility of staff, is what I'm saying.
That's correct.
To maintain this record.
That's correct.
Again, this was just for discussion purposes. I've looked through the UDO, Charlie, and it appears that these are zoning instructions that the town board has approved in the past. They do not, the actual community meeting requirement does not appear to be within the UDO. So I believe that the board could approve changes to our zoning application instructions without going through a text amendment process.
That's correct. That's not a formal amendment to the UDO.
Okay. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you all have at this time.
Commissioner McCool.
Sorry, I was on mute. I just wanted to express my excitement, may not be the right word, but I'm in favor of this. I was made aware last week about some conflicts between what was told to us at a recent meeting and what was actually the thoughts and feelings of the community. I think I'm in favor of this because it's fully transparent. For us as elected officials to go to these public meetings may be distracting to what needs to go on. So I think the recording is super important to come to us. That way we can, be sure that what we're getting is the correct information and we're getting the voices of our community heard, because that can be a bit of a dangerous game if you're fully, the applicants have something to gain by maybe stretching the truth. So I'm fully in favor of this.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I feel that minutes are easily taken in this instance. But the meeting was called to order at. The petitioner's presentation was public concerns or comments and response and adjourned at. You don't need reports from committees. You don't need you know, some of the old business, new business, things like that. I have two questions. Is there a cost related to this for staff? You know, if they're going to maintain recordings, et cetera? And is this a specific concern to one application, or is this a trending concern over the last X amount of time?
So on the storage requirements, I would have to check with Wayne Cogdell, our IT. His title's IT manager, I think. I don't know his actual title. I don't feel like that's going to be a major concern. We would also need to discuss how the meetings are recorded. Is it someone recording off of their iPhone? Is it on a handheld recording device like Lori uses sometimes for our meetings when we're back in person? Like what is we may have several options, and then how is it provided to us? Is it coming in on a thumb drive? Is it being emailed as a audio file? And then finally, they may never be used. The board and neighbors, people may not have concerns at all, or if there are questions about the minutes, then we would provide that audio recording for whoever requested.
Lori, did you have a comment?
Oh, I just wanted to say that the actual storage cost would be minimal to the town.
You said that so much more quickly than I did. Thanks.
Commissioner Urban.
I'd be all for a trial run, and maybe the fact that trial run would be adjacent to meeting minutes. I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. But I also think maybe there's a third option in there, that there could be a third-party dictation or transcribing, because I have found that in larger rezoning cases where you may have a room of 20, 30, or 40 people, and it does happen occasionally, to record that with the amount of noise in a room, idle chit chat, secondary, I don't know how you would address that. So I don't know if there's another option in there. Unfortunately, there would be a small cost to the petitioner, but that they could have a third party, nonpartisan, take dictation to the event, because I've seen in the larger projects just too much going on, and the person taking the meeting minutes is having a tough enough time running the meeting, neither less recording it.
Any other questions or comments? I'd just like to say that I support some form of this, either as Commissioner Urban suggested, or actual recording, because I think the theme of our times these days is transparency, and to have everything up front and be as transparent as possible. And I think this is just another step towards that transparency. We're not taking anybody's word for what was said or wasn't said. It's transparent. There's a recording. I do agree that if you had a large room, it may be difficult, but that may require whoever's asking a question to come forward and speak into a microphone or something of that nature. But some sort of trial run of this, I would be for. Let's try it. If it's really problematic, we can revisit it, but I would be for. Anybody else have a comment or would like to weigh in before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to add too that the community meeting is, we don't want this to be viewed as a replacement for the public hearing, right? I mean, we still want to ensure that residents understand that, look, you still have to come voice your opinion officially before the mayor and the board at the hearing, and that the community meeting is really serves as more of a heads up and face-to-face time with the applicant.
Good point. Very good point. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 10. Consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to accept our consent agenda tonight.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we approve consent agenda A through F, 1 and 2.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Miller. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 11, unfinished business. Consider the Police Citizen Advisory Committee. Chief Clark Pennington.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. So I'm here tonight to request the official permission to authorize me to establish and move towards or forward with a Matthews Police Advisory Committee. I have provided you with a working document, which you'll see here shortly. But just as history, we did discuss this on July 27th, pretty in-depthly with our HR attorney. It was at that point to move forward with this proposition and with the working document of establishing the Citizen Advisory Committee. So I am here before you today to discuss this. You should have all received a working document, which includes a mission statement and duties and responsibilities. Lori, if we could, there we go. I guess some of the highlights I'd like to talk about here today is really the mission of the advisory committee is to really establish a connection with our community in our police and community relations and our planning and our training and programming of public education. So as we know in this very turbulent time that we live in, our job as a police department is to establish or to continue to establish that trust and legitimacy towards proving to our community that we are here, we are part of them, and the only way we do police is by their consent. So part of the duties and responsibilities you'll see as we move through this thing, one of the main focus and goals is really to enhance that community police relationships. And I don't want to go through each and every one of these. You guys have received this ahead of time, so I will leave time for you to obviously ask me questions about it. But the membership, as we discussed, would be a separate 7-member representation with a really good cross representation of our community to include age, race, and gender. So we're really excited about moving that forward. And then obviously the bylaws and the procedures will be established by the committee. So I do envision this being at least a quarterly meeting for the committee. We will obviously hopefully move that up, I should say, to a more regular meeting in the beginning until we establish a meeting process. And then after that meeting process, at least quarterly, we will meet. And that meeting will have minutes published to the website within 72 hours. I'll open it up for any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions for Chief Pennington? Commissioner Miller, sure, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Chief, I believe it reads something to the effect that the majority should be made up of Matthews citizens. Shouldn't they all be Matthews citizens? And a second to that, how would this committee relate to the citizen volunteers? Would they intertwine? Please share.
Let me answer that in reverse. So the Citizen Volunteer Program is a completely separate and opposite program. That program is incorporating our citizen volunteers into the working operations of the police department. They, upon clearing background checks and all of those type of requirements, they do work within the police department. They help us with administrative duties. They help us with patrol duties. They help us with, for example, our chaplain volunteer is also part of that program. So that's a completely separate program. Okay. This idea, your question was, should they all be made up of Matthews residents? Well, Matthews is a much bigger community than just our residents, right? We do have a very large business population. We have a large business community, I guess. We do want to incorporate them because they should have a say in some of the feelings and the ideas and the concepts that need to be brought forward to our Matthews community. So we don't want to exclude them by just including our residents population.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Pennington? I'd just like to say that I think this goes along, as I commented earlier, along with transparency and communicating clearly and openly with the community. I think it's an awesome step, Chief, and be happy to support it. And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve authorization of the Chief of Police to establish and move forward with the Matthews Police Advisory Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley and former Highway Patrolman Whitley. A second by Commissioner Miller. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Whitley?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Chief, and good luck with that.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 12, new business award contract for Crestdale Road Side Path. Susan Habina-Willard.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. I am delighted to bring to you this evening a request for approval to enter into contract for the Crestdale Road Side Path project. Jay, if you can move over to the map. Just a quick orientation to remind everyone where we're talking. We're talking about Crestdale Road and widening the existing sidewalk from 5 feet to 10 feet. And with a starting point there on the left-hand corner of your screen on Matthews Chapel Road, and traversing northward about a quarter mile to Matthews School Road. And that would be there on the west side of the street. Switching back to the memo, thank you, Jay. You read over what our funding sources are, and which have already been appropriated in our budget. And additionally, we have about $175,000 remaining in another sidewalk grant fund that we can use towards this project. I inadvertently put $137,000, but finance corrected me. It's $175,000. Plans were developed. We took the preliminary plan and reviewed that with the primary property owner and made some changes to the plan, got our final plans, and we're currently working on easements for the construction. However, due to our funding constraints, we needed to move ahead and put this project out on the street for bids. The DOT, because they were holding some of those funds, which we've talked about previously, we don't need to go into that right now, but they asked us to bid 2 projects, the first being the project without the house funds and the second being the total project. Since we put that out to bid, DOT has given us authorization to bid the whole project. So tonight, since we already have enough money to cover the whole project appropriated, and since the DOT has said go ahead and bid the whole project, we would like to ask the board tonight to allow the manager to enter into contract with the lowest responsible bidder, which was DOT Construction. We did receive 3 bids when we opened them on August 4th. And we are asking be for the entire project length of a little over a quarter mile, and also to allow a $30,000 contingency during construction. And this whole thing would be contingent on concurrence with NCDOT, even though they haven't given us the money yet. Because they are the pass-through, they're asking that they concur with our selection of DOT Construction as the contractor. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have any questions for Susan or motions?
Well, Susan, thank you, ma'am. And I want to thank you, those 3-way stop sign. It seems like it's working real good. It really looks good up there. And so I'd like to make a motion tonight that we give the town manager award the execution for the contract for DOT for the Crestdale Side Path Project 21-002 to extend the whole route all the way up to Matthews School Road.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Bland. We will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Can I say an amen?
Yes, sir.
Amen.
Commissioner
Yes.
Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote affirmative as well, so that passes unanimously. So thank you, Susan. Appreciate your report tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, we're going to go on to agenda item lucky number 13, the mayor's report. I have a few items to discuss tonight. The first is what one of our public commenters spoke about. That's Mr. Frank Lafagala from Jekyll and Hyde's. And I do believe, and we discussed this in a previous council meeting, I believe that while the intent was good in the original proclamation that was signed by Charlotte, Mint Hill, Davidson, Pineville, and Matthews, that did not allow sitting or standing in the bar area for food, the thought was, is most of us have been to a bar before, and the bar area is typically crowded and people are crowding in and trying to get drinks or to meet somebody new or whatever. But the unintended consequence here was that by not allowing people to eat at these locations or drink during the time that's prescribed for drinking, in many cases, if we think about some of the restaurants in town, Beantown, certainly Jekyll and Hyde's, they have large bar areas. And if I'm honest, I can't go back to the owner of Jekyll and Hyde's and give him a logical reason why, if they socially distanced, why we couldn't allow him to use his bar area to serve people to eat or drink during the time that drinking is allowed. And so Mint Hill also picked up on this. The mayor of Mint Hill, what the section of the proclamation said originally was there shall not allow any sitting or standing at bars for food and beverage consumption. This is at any time, and shall not allow patrons to touch shared surfaces such as bar counters or game equipment such as pool tables, darts, pinball machines, or any other such game equipment that requires social touching. And so what the mayor of Mint Hill, what they did was they kept that portion in there. They said, you know, you can't use pool tables, you can't throw darts and share darts, but they do allow patrons to eat at the bar if they socially distance, and they can't drink there after 11 p.m. as the current proclamation stands. So I can sign this as mayor, but once again, so we don't need to have a vote on it, but I'd like to know if, make sure that nobody has any real heartburn with it. I think it would be a help to our businesses that are struggling. And I cannot come up with a logical argument that says you can eat at a table if you socially distance, but you can't sit at a bar and eat if you socially distance. There's no logical reason for me to make that argument. Commissioner Bland.
Yeah, well, I'm with you all the way, Mayor, except for one thing. If people will follow, the problem is when we do this, then people think, oh, they don't really enforce it or whatever. I'm all for it. I'm with them. I'll say I'll go along with it if there's enforcement and these people are responsible about, you know, holding themselves accountable. You know, the problem is when they just say, and I've ridden by some places and it's like they are not paying any attention to it at all. But then I go by other places and they're doing an excellent job. How do we, you know, I feel we have a responsibility to look after the safety, health, and well-being of the citizens. But yet, if we don't put some kind of enforcement measure, I don't know what in the world to do. If you say, yeah, everybody can sit at the bar, well, that's the next step, that everybody's drinking at the bar and everybody's leaning on each other at the bar. It puts a lot of responsibility on these business owners to enforce the rules, and that's tough for them to do. That's my big
fair
beef.
point.
That's my problem.
That's a fair point. And I will say, and I don't have the original proclamation right in front of me, Hazen, you may know, but there's a portion of that proclamation that does have an enforcement mechanism. It is a misdemeanor to violate these rules. We have not aggressively enforced them, as you and I have discussed, Commissioner Bland, but it would certainly be the expectation that social distancing, et cetera, would be followed. And if not, it could be a misdemeanor. Do you have the proclamation in front of you, Hazen?
I do have the proclamation. I don't know exactly where that is in there, but we do spend, the county COVID policy group does talk, and this is one of the topics. In fact, they talked about it today. Charlotte, we have like a task force. You report it into the Charlotte. Charlotte uses ALE and ABC officers and their own police officers, and they did do a lot of patrolling. In fact, apparently there was a problem in Mint Hill, where Mint Hill had gone to the 11 o'clock, and somebody from Charlotte, this is a report, I haven't heard it verified, kind of went in and said, you guys got to shut it down, or I don't know if they just kind of a friendly warning, but there is an enforcement mechanism. I do think we're prepared to enforce. I know we want to talk to folks first, but if somebody didn't listen, well, in fact, the Charlotte folks reported they did give out one citation this weekend to somebody that was violating it. So
I think the owner of Jekyll and Hyde's brings up a very valid point that if we're already restricting the capacity to 50%, and then we additionally say, and by the way, you can't use any of your bar area. And again, we have places, think how much bar area there is in Beantown, for instance. We're saying you can't use any of that to serve people ever, not just, can't serve them food at the bar. I think it's overly restrictive. If you're going to allow people in the restaurant, I don't know why they can't eat at the bar if they can eat at the table. It's not a big distinction to me.
If they're
Mr.
going
Bland has a valid point. I don't think you can allow people to be commingling, and it's not good old days like it was at the bar where you're slipping in between people. It has to be socially distant. Hazen, you and I talked about some establishment you went to and they had put up plexiglass or something at their bar, or you showed me some place that maybe it was at the beach that attempted to use the bar area. They pulled tables near the bar.
Yeah, that was a place they kind of put a table adjacent to the bar in order to try to kind of maximize seating. They put the perpendicular, they moved the tables perpendicular to the bar, but nobody was eating at the bar. I mean, it seemed to work okay.
Chief Bennington, do you want to weigh in?
I guess I just want to reinforce Hazen's comment. The county does have this ALE task force. If we do, and we have had conversation with them in the past in reference to a establishment in Matthews. So if and when we do need to move that step forward to the enforcement side of it, they are more than willing and happy to work with us on that. As is everything, we talk about education first. We're going to educate, reinforce, and then cite. I mean, we are not. This is all complaint driven, obviously, but we're going to educate, reinforce, and then cite. But the county is more than happy. I've spoken to CMPD Chief Estes, and they are more than happy to come in and assist us in these matters. And it is a second-degree misdemeanor, by the way.
Thank you. So other than Dave's, Commissioner Bland's concern, which is, I understand, does anybody else have any real heartburn if we at least try this? We can always go back if we have to, but as a nod to our business owners to allow them to do a little more business. Again, if they follow the rules, Commissioner Bland, there is no logical reason to say you can eat at a table, that's safe, but you can't eat at a bar, that's unsafe. I don't see the distinction.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I support it.
Mayor, I support it too, with the same stipulation as Mayor Hill, you said they did keep that other part about pool tables and other stuff, but they are still at 11 o'clock has to shut that down. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe they could still, with this change, they could still eat food at the bar, socially distanced, but they could no longer drink alcohol after 11 p.m.
Okay.
This is all in section 6 of the current proclamation. And what it would do is we would just take out the part that says you can't eat at the bar. It would say something. I want to make ours a little different than Mint Hills, that it reiterates that you have to follow all the rules of social distancing and et cetera, then you can eat at the bar. And that would just be a nod to our business owners, let them do a little more business. And if they abuse the privilege, then we'll have to go back and revisit it. But I think we owe them that opportunity.
So Mayor, just for a point of clarification, under the current order, food and alcohol shall be closed for on-site consumption of food and beverages at 11 p.m.
Okay, well, I stand corrected, but as we discussed previously, most of our restaurants don't serve food after 11 p.m. anyway, so.
I'm still good. That's good.
Yeah, the big concern for most of these folks is not even about alcohol. It's just losing all that space that are in these restaurants where they can't utilize the space, and we're asking them to reconfigure their restaurant at great expense when they already are suffering. So I think it's just a reasonable request from business owners that we try it, and if they abuse it, then we'll revisit it. But I don't think they will. I think it's going to be a good deal. So Hazen, then I would like to ask if you could assist, or staff could assist in us coming up with a revised proclamation just on that one point. It's very similar to Mint Hills.
Yes, sir.
A couple other items real quickly. I am a little bit past due in getting back to Dana Stujenki regarding our mobility study. I did express some disappointment with our town staff about our consultants not willing to go back and change some of their diagrams and things in that study. When the study was a six-figure study, and we only had requested a couple things to be changed. And Dana actually called me last week and wanted to go over what I was talking about. Specifically, I was talking about the parallel parking on the 100 block of Trade Street, where the study still showed it as parallel parking, but said, don't pay any attention to this diagram. We're not going to allow parallel parking here. I wanted them to fix that. But I'm past due in getting back with Dana to get them to do that. Of course, the consultant doesn't want the town upset with them, so they're willing to go back and make these changes. So I'd just like to ask all the commissioners if you could quickly look at the mobility study. Now, we're certainly not changing content or anything like that. We already voted and it's approved. But if there's a minor editorial change or a diagram that's incorrect that could be corrected and make it a better document, you could let me know that as soon as possible, like by tomorrow sometime, so I can get back with Dana. We get back to the consultant and I'll make those few changes. And again, the only one I was really concerned about was the parallel parking. But if you guys are aware of anything else, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mayor Higdon. I was a commissioner when we changed it from parallel parking and added the bump outs by Weaver, Bennett, and Bland and a few other areas and went to diagonal parking or angled parking. And those same business owners complained then that we were changing it. It was done for pedestrian safety and to slow traffic down, etc. I think pedestrian safety is the best thing for downtown Matthews, but I would just caution you to realize that the same people that complained when we changed it before are complaining again that we change it back to what they wanted in the first place.
Fair enough, but right now the verbiage says one thing and the picture shows something different, and I think that's not appropriate for a $130,000 study. So I think they should match up.
Agree.
Change it later we can, but they ought to match for that kind of money that we paid for a study. So if there's any other things of that nature, again, we can't, obviously are not changing content. Dana will kill me if I even open up that Pandora's box, but we're just talking about if there's any diagrams or anything that you think are incorrect that don't match the verbiage, then let me know and I'll relay that to Dana and she'll get back with the consultant and we'll get that updated.
Thank you.
The other thing I want to mention is on August 18th at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church, Bishop Whitley's church, we'll be having a Race Matters Community Forum. And currently the participants will be, as a panel discussion, will be myself, Hazen, and Police Chief Clark Pennington. It's possible we may, I don't know, Larry, if you want to address this, we may ask a couple other commissioners to participate. Is that correct at this point?
No, we have also the Mayor Pro Tem is going to be participating, and I have one other that has approved to be there. So we have a 5 panel there, and we're inviting all of the commissioners to join in. We'll send you the link that you can view, but I'm going to redo the agenda and send it out along with the participants. But it will start at 7 o'clock and it'll be live streamed and on Facebook for the 5 different churches. So you'll be able to see that, but I'll get that out to all of you that's going to be on the panel before Wednesday.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just like to ask the commissioners, if you're available that night, please at least watch. A lot of important things will be discussed. And again, these are, as we said earlier, these are always kind of difficult discussions, but I think it's discussions we need to have, and it's important to have our leaders, participate or be aware of what's being discussed. And finally, my final thing is a long mayor's report tonight. I want to express a very happy birthday to 2 of our local residents. Miss Cicely Ford turned 100 on August 1st, and Miss Eliza Washington celebrated her 102nd birthday on July 30th. So happy birthday, ladies, and I wish you many more. And that's all for the mayor's report tonight. We'll go on to the attorney's report.
I have a better report. I have no report.
A little better. We'll move on to the town manager's report.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We will once again adjourn this meeting if I can get someone to make a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner. Why is everybody so hesitant to adjourn? You guys just love being here. We have a motion by Commissioner McCool. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Garner. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
And Commissioner Miller. Thank you very much. Heard an interesting conversation today about using the correct gender. I was about to say thank you, guys. That's not appropriate. So thank you, commissioners and staff. And we had a good meeting, and I'll see you all soon. Good night.
Be safe, everybody. Love you guys.
Take care,
Thank you,
sir.
guys. Yeah.